Hello there, and welcome to Cybersecurity Today. I'm Jim Wiggins, your host, and we're here to bring you the latest and key developments in computer security. Over the next 30 minutes, we'll be delving into an action-packed program filled with fascinating conversations and current news from the world of cybersecurity. Our unique talk show newscast format is designed to cater to a diverse audience, from beginners all the way to the experts. If you're new to cybersecurity, we'll equip you with the essential knowledge and tools that you need to keep your computer system safe. And for our experienced viewers, we'll be offering insights from some of the top experts in the industry, giving you a glimpse into the future of cybersecurity. So sit back, relax, and enjoy our informative and entertaining exploration of cybersecurity. We're thrilled to have you with us tonight. Now, we've got a thrilling lineup in store for you featuring two distinct segments that will keep you up to date on all things related to cybersecurity. In our first segment, we call this Cyber Bites. Here, we'll delve into some of the most current news articles and events that are happening today in the cybersecurity space. We cover everything from data breaches all the way to new and potentially emerging threats. If you want to stay up to date on the latest developments in this constantly evolving landscape, you won't want to miss this segment. We have a lot to cover, and we're excited to share these critical updates with you, so stay tuned. And then joining us in our second segment, we have Mr. Robert Vescio, the Chief Analytics Officer at Secure Systems Innovation Corporation, coming on to the show to discuss the topic of measuring cyber risk in economic terms. As cybersecurity continues to be a major concern for organizations worldwide, understanding the economic impact of cyber risks is crucial. We're excited to have Mr. Vescio share his expertise with us on this complex issue. Okay, so let's get into the Cyber Bites and talk about what's going on today in the cybersecurity industry. In a bid to offer interactive artificial intelligence-powered assistance, Microsoft has introduced a new feature, Dynamics 365 Copilot, to its supply chain management platform. The feature will enable shippers to identify and respond to potential disruptions in their respective cyber chain. Copilot can be accessed through Microsoft's Supply Chain Center platform and is equipped with artificial intelligence capabilities that can track potential risks, such as weather, and generate predictive insights. Once Copilot flags an external risk, supply chain planners can then use artificial intelligence to draft an email to suppliers, alerting them to potential disruptions and minimizing risks. According to Ray Smith, Vice President of Supply Chain, Business Applications and Platforms at Microsoft, Copilot will enhance the capabilities of supply chain managers, aiding in mitigating potential disruptions. We've been delving into the most recent updates in the world of cybersecurity, and it's been an engaging conversation up to this point. Now we'll be taking a brief break, and upon our return, we'll be joined by Mr. Robert Vescio to discuss measuring cyber risk in economic terms. Stay with us, and we'll be back shortly.
With liberty and justice for all.
Does that mean bunnies?
And puppies?
Every year, thousands of companion animals and billions of factory, farm, and lab animals are legally abused and killed. But this can be stopped. Tell Congress to support sensible, humane laws. Sign the Animal Bill of Rights now.
Don't forget the puppies.
Welcome back to Cybersecurity Today. For our second segment, we're being joined by Mr. Robert Vescio from the Secure Systems Innovation Corporation that goes by the acronym SSIC. At SSIC, Robert is the Chief Analytics Officer and the inventor of the X Analytics product line. Today, Robert holds 5 patents for his work and has contributed to a new book entitled Cybersecurity for Business. Robert is a seasoned cybersecurity professional with expertise in areas such as risk measurement methodologies and models, cyber risk data analytics, cyber economics, cyber risk research and analysis, cybersecurity frameworks as related to understanding control effectiveness, and even cyber insurance. Robert, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Jim.
So we're great to have you here. And I thought maybe what we might do is to see if we could have you maybe talk briefly about your cyber and risk management background, just to give our audience kind of a flavor for who you are and what you've done.
Yeah, absolutely. Jim, most recently, my background, at least from 2016 to where we are today, has really been involved in cyber economics. And that's taking traditional cybersecurity metrics and looking at those from a perspective of financial loss related to cyber incidents. Before that, of course, like many in the industry, I was doing typical cyber risk assessments, working in managed security, op centers, working with a variety of different tools, doing vulnerability pen testing, vulnerability scans, looking at policies, physical inspections. But really, in most recent times, the focus has been cyber economics.
Understood. I want to talk for a moment about your patents. I know you've registered several that focus in cyber and I think also within risk. Can you tell our viewers a little bit about kind of the methodologies that those patents kind of focus around, just at a high level?
Yeah, sure. So, to understand risk, we want to understand three major variables. So we want to understand the threat landscape, and obviously that's different for every industry and every individual business inside of an industry vertical. We want to make sure that we understand the exposure landscape, the revenue that's associated with the business, the type of company, the type of records that they have, the volume of those records. If they hold intellectual property, are they performing monetary transactions using Swift messaging platforms or ACH or electronic wire transfers? All of those elements build up what we call the exposure profile, which is the second variable. And then the third variable, of course, is how well they implement controls. That could be something related to the NIST CSF framework or CIS, critical security controls version 8, lots of other frameworks that are out there in the industry as well. But we take all of those things, we combine them together, and it helps us understand risk across a set of distinct risk scenarios. Those risk scenarios then map into key loss categories, such as data breach, ransomware, business interruption, et cetera. Behind the scenes, there's a lot of calculations that take place, but ultimately, it's taking very common things that folks know and creating an output and a monetary context.
So can we build upon that? Maybe talk a little bit about your philosophy when it comes to cyber risk. How does it differ from the conventional approaches? I mean, a lot of the words you mentioned are kind of common within the vernacular around risk management, but maybe you could give us your insight into how you guys are kind of looking at this from maybe a different perspective.
Yeah, we, especially for me, and I can say the same for my business partners as well, we all came from different places in cybersecurity to where we are now with X Analytics. But ultimately, we saw the same problems. We saw that business leaders, corporate directors, did not understand and still continue to struggle to understand what cyber risk means to their business. And of course, a lot of traditional mechanisms try to produce something like a maturity score or something that looks like a credit score or something that's a letter grade, like you're a B+. And we find that business leaders struggle to understand what any of that means. In fact, well before X Analytics, I was in a board meeting where even with a lot of preparation, working side by side with the chief information security officer for that particular company, the meeting fell flat because we tried to deliver to the business leaders traditional cybersecurity metrics, and it's too technical. They can't relate it to other operational risks, and they have lots of other risks that are outside of cyber. So our philosophy has been to take those traditional, very technical metrics that are related to the cybersecurity industry and translate those into a financial output, which then could be compared to other operational risk. And once you do that, the business leaders can really get a sense of, is this a problem that does require additional use of finite resources? Or is it a problem that, perhaps we could just accept, and there's other bigger problems that we have to contend with? So overall, that's our philosophy, Jim.
Understood. So how would then an organization take that kind of mindset and apply it to the modeling that they might do? I mean, ultimately, I'm sure they could bring you guys in to help out, but from a high level perspective, sure. How does that integrate with an organization's operations?
So, we could take something really basic that everybody's dealing with today: inflation. Inflation right now sitting around 6%. Obviously, it's a volatile number; it continues to change. But that is a problem that companies have to contend with. And if they think about their cost of doing business, if that's raising by 6%, or how they need to sell their products in the marketplace, if they need to raise that to make up for increased operational costs, these are all decisions that business leaders have to make. If their cyber risk problem is, let's say, 2% or 1.5%, then that gives them the context that inflation's a much bigger problem than specifically dealing with cyber risk. Of course, there's other things that they have to deal with as well. There's tax liabilities, there's other things that businesses have to deal with. But when you look at it in a monetary lens, specifically as a proportion of revenue, then, and if all other operational risks are a proportion of revenue, then it gives them a sense of how to rank each of those items and which of those items really are the most critical to the business and the items that are least critical to the business. And of course, anybody could apply that same philosophy, whether they use an X analytics or some other method.
Do you find that that kind of message resonates with business leaders, or have they been so trained on the traditional risk management models that it almost seems foreign to them? Do you see where I'm going with that question? Does that make sense?
I do. It tends to be more foreign to folks in the cybersecurity industry. And in some ways, they want to hold on to the past, right? In some ways, they want to hold on to those maturity scores because they feel that maturity score is improving as they continue to invest in cybersecurity. Take something like NIST. They're a 2.5 on a maturity scale of 0 through 5. They continue to make improvements, applying those NIST subcategories throughout their organization. Now, all of a sudden, instead of a 2.5, they've moved up to a 2.7. And that's a positive message. And the cybersecurity industry always wants to reveal a positive message as they report to leadership. However, when we report cyber from a financial perspective, we get feedback like, wow, I've been looking and waiting for something like this for a really long time. Finally, somebody can explain it in a language that I understand. And when we get that feedback, of course, we know we're on the right path, and it just encourages us to continue on the path that we're currently on. The challenging part, going back to the traditional cybersecurity industry, is that when you look at cyber from a monetary perspective, it does have volatile components to it. And so it's not always going to improve. There are things, for example, the threat landscape, due to emerging threat conditions, could cause an increase in that annual expected loss related to cyber. Other things, the business could acquire a new sub-entity that they bring into the fold, and that changes the exposure profile of the business, which therefore increases annual expected loss. And I think that's the most challenging part, is that the cybersecurity industry wants to always see this constant improvement. And in reality, cyber, just like the stock market, has elements that are going to have it go up and down as time continues.
So as you know, as I'm listening to you, one of the things that kind of resonates with me is that a lot of the frameworks that are out there almost do a comparative analysis between organizations. And what I think I hear you say is that you're not so much concerned about that, but really the nuances of the organization itself and ultimately what's beneficial from a requirements perspective for that organization. Is that a different, is that a correct way to analyze what you're saying here on the show?
In a lot of ways it is, which, by the way, Jim, we give benchmarking data to all of our customers. So we have customers in healthcare, financial services, tech services, and they want to see what they look like compared to others in their industry. So we do have benchmark data so that we can reveal what that data looks like and they can draw those comparisons. But Jim, you're absolutely right. The exposure profile of the business is unique to every business. So the controls, for example, that you need to focus on, if we refer to the CIS Critical Security Controls version 8, there might be some organizations in the same industry vertical where things like security awareness training is the absolutely most important control that they need to focus on. And for others, it might be network infrastructure. It really depends on the context of their business. And what I mean by that, if they have a lot of exposure in data breach, then there's a set of things that become really critical, like data protection for that organization. But if they have an online presence and all of their revenue is generated by being available 24/7, then that's a very different set of controls that they need to focus on that's outside of data protection. Now, of course, every business is the combination of all of those things, but that unique makeup really does determine prioritization of where finite resources should be leveraged. But in addition to that, it also means a very different expected loss for every one of those businesses.
So this is an interesting way to look at it. What are the potential strengths? Obviously, the strengths are that they're individualized to the organization, but what are weaknesses with this approach of looking at this from a predominantly financial perspective versus more the traditional methodology? Have you run into any particular weaknesses that are important to just kind of keep in perspective?
Yeah, it's a great question. We haven't seen any true weaknesses. In fact, it's providing clarity, which is really needed in this conversation. And then, by the way, it can extend not only from entity risk, but we can extend the same modeling in which we have to systemic risk, which is a big concern for example, cyber insurance underwriters or folks that participate in the ILS market and they want to create backstop instruments for the insurance like catastrophic bonds. So the problem to folks that are handling cybersecurity inside the organization is that it might indicate that they don't need a bigger budget. And of course, that could create some adverse reactions. Sure. But in reality, if the data is the data speaking, and if the data indicates that they don't need more budget and that budget would be better used in other places or returned back to the shareholders through dividends, then that's a decision that the business leaders are going to have to make. And in some cases, that is the best decision to make.
Understood. So I have to ask this question because you and I both were trained on the classical risk management models where there's qualitative and quantitative. How does this idea of looking at it from a financial risk perspective differ from the traditional quantitative approach that we learned about all those years ago, where they were focused on numbers and dollars? Is it the same, or do you guys see a difference between that and the more traditional quantitative approaches?
Yeah, if we could go back to like our old CISSP training,
exactly.
Those old days.
Exactly.
I think that those formulas that were created, and of course they were meant to be very high level, those formulas. I think they were setting the framework for how we could understand cybersecurity from a monetary perspective. There's some elements in those very sort of simple formulas that really don't work quite well. And that's something that we figured out. And that's why we filed patents and we continue to file patents for what we do. However, the biggest challenge today, I think, with cyber and looking at it from a financial perspective is that it's really being driven out of the cyber insurance industry, including the brokers. And they have a need to do things very fast. And when you do things fast, you're not really building a complete understanding of that organization. So, there's a lot of, we're going to do outside-in approaches, which Jim, I know, you know some of those products that are out in the marketplace, because we need something in 3 hours or 4 hours to process this particular application. Well, that outside-in approach is missing a lot of unique perspectives related that are inside the organization. And they have other limitations as well. And so with that being said, I think ultimately a complete picture, regardless if you use traditional methods or current methods like we have in X Analytics, a complete picture is absolutely what you need to generate. And if that takes you a little bit longer than 4 hours to generate, the value that you get out of it is so much worth it than trying to go for something that's super fast and super lightweight, but yet can be completely wrong for your entity.
Understood. So tell me a little bit about the X Analytics platform. Is it hardware, software, methodology? Is it all of the above? Is it none of the above? How does it all kind of, a big picture, work?
It's a SaaS application, so it's cloud-based. Folks can get access to it almost instantaneously. The platform includes everything. So it's the complete processing engine. It has all the necessary input structure so that you can build out your threat landscape, you can build out your exposure profile, you can build out your control inputs. In addition to that, it also includes lots of back-end data, and that back-end data is always being updated on a monthly basis. So in fact, we just went through another monthly update this past week. And the reason that we update those back-end variables is to allow for all of the changes that are taking place in the world related to cyber and the cost of cyber. Many organizations don't have time to crunch through the data, or they don't have the skill set. So the platform itself provides not only the input mechanisms and the output mechanism through the dashboards and the complete processing engine, but it also includes that tuning and calibration behind the scenes that is so necessary for understanding this constantly evolving problem that's out there in the world.
Would you think of it as kind of like a continuous monitoring or continuous auditing type of system that's providing near real-time data, or is it point in time? How does that work?
Yeah, it is point in time in the sense that when somebody builds up their profile, the quantifications that are being produced in the outputs are based on the back-end variables, based on the algorithm, how the algorithm is written in that particular moment. Again, that's changing on a monthly basis, which is fine. For a financial analysis of cyber, it's completely fine on a monthly basis. You don't need something more often because businesses are modifying their decisions more often than that anyways. It could be incorporated. We've done partnerships with other entities that do constant monitoring using some of those outside-in approaches. We have the necessary hooks into the platform. So if somebody did want to see, as things are changing in the world through an outside-in approach and they wanted that to feed into the application, those hooks already exist and folks could take advantage of it if they wanted to see day-by-day changes in the platform. What we tend to find is that a monthly update is completely sufficient. And for many organizations and business leaders, especially corporate directors, a quarterly update is completely fine for their perspective.
Does it integrate with all of the standard control frameworks? You mentioned the CSF, ISO, COBIT, all the standard 853. Do all those control catalogs kind of flow into, or can they be used by the platform?
We're currently expanding the frameworks that are supported. Right now, I think we're up to about 19 frameworks that are supported. And just to keep everything working in a very smooth perspective, we use CIS as the hub framework. So we try to map everything that we can into CIS. And those 18 controls are really easy for business leaders to understand, much easier than, say, the subcategories or categories that make up the NIST cybersecurity framework. So that's our first thing that we do as we introduce any new framework into the platform. Like I said, we're around 18 or 19 frameworks today, but we continue to update that list based on feedback from our customers, both in pre-sales and active customers that we have in the platform.
Understood. So we're running low on time, Robert, but I wanted to ask you, looking into your crystal ball, if you have to look out into the risk management industry, how do you see things evolving in the next 3 to 5 years?
Well, 3 to 5 years, that's a long time. And if I have a crystal ball, then we need to go to Las Vegas and make some bets here, Jim. We get asked to make predictions a lot, and we can make short-term predictions 6 months, a year out, and we're pretty good about those estimations using X Analytics. 5 years is a pretty big span of time, but I will tell you some big macro things that we do see that are going to take place. I do expect a shift of more cybersecurity features into the cloud offerings, especially the big cloud providers that are out there that dominate the landscape. We already saw it, right? Google bought Mandiant a while back, which is a big forensics firm for folks that don't know. And I think we're going to see a lot more of that take place. Microsoft clearly has a lot of components built into their cloud offering, and they're just going to continue to build out. I think this is going to be good for the industry because it's going to ensure that folks get cybersecurity as they get into those cloud services almost automatically, which is a huge win for especially small and medium-sized businesses that are out there. Second, I do think we're going to see some really big changes in the cyber insurance industry. So for folks that are trying to use a risk transfer mechanism in place of risk mitigation, or maybe in conjunction with risk mitigation, I do think we're going to see a lot of changes in the cyber insurance industry. And with that being said, the ILS market, which writes those cat bonds, they are going to further serve as a backstop for the cyber insurance industry, which is going to create greater capacity. There are folks that need those policies to be much larger in size than what they currently are today, or to cover a bigger spectrum of cyber-related risks. And as the ILS market is the backstop to the carriers, we're going to start to see some additional improvements in the insurance landscape from that as well. But those are probably some of the best macro predictions that I can make, Jim, if we're looking multiple years out at this point.
Understood. Hey, Robert, last question for you. If our viewers want to learn more about you and the X Analytics platform, how can they contact you, or how can they reach out?
Easy. Just go to www.xanalytics.com. All of our contact information's there. You can reach through us, and somebody from the team will reach back out and provide you the necessary information that you need.
Awesome. Thank you. So, Robert, we're out of time. Thanks for coming in and talking to us about measuring risk from a financial impact perspective. We really appreciate it.
Thank you, Jim. Thank you for the time.
Guys, that's going to go ahead and be the end of today's Cybersecurity Today episode. We hope and trust that you found today's episode valuable and gained some new knowledge about cybersecurity. Thanks again to Mr. Robert Vescio and sharing his expertise in risk management, and specifically as it relates to financial risk. To stay informed about upcoming episodes and learn more about the show, don't forget to visit our website at cybersecuritytoday.org. Additionally, we welcome your comments or questions via email at contactus@cybersecuritytoday.org. Thanks for joining us today, and we look forward to seeing you at our next broadcast. Until then, have a great day, guys. Thanks a lot. Goodbye.